You, the other day, made a comment about 9/11 in which you suggested that the U.S. government had not been wholly forthcoming about what happened that day, that there had been lying by the federal bureaucracies. That seems obviously true. The response was unbelievable. It was immediate. You were attacked as a conspiracy monger, as a lunatic, but not just by the left, also by the goons at the Wall Street Journal editorial page. Wrote a whole piece about how you disqualified yourself by even asking that question. What were you saying, and why was the reaction as fierce as it was, do you think?
It was fascinating, Tucker. I've had many of these moments in the campaign where they said, this is the campaign ender. This is over. He just blew it. This is one of them. So this is like the fourth or fifth of those. But what was interesting about it was, right, this was not a left-wing chorus, right? This was mostly actually a right-leaning chorus. And Mike Pence, and he was deeply disappointed. Chris Murphy, this Democratic senator guy, says something very similar to Mike Pence. And so it's fascinating. It says there's something going on here. So in fairness, Tucker, I didn't suggest it. I explicitly said that the government absolutely lied to us. The 9/11 Commission lied. The FBI lied. Now, is this a core point of my campaign? No, it's not. I actually went on a comedy show where some guy asked me, was the moon landing fake? I said, I think it was real. Then he asked me, did the government tell us the truth about 9/11? I said, no, they did not. So in response to a question, I'm going to answer honestly.
Yeah.
And the thing I had in mind was the facts. There's this guy, Al Bayoumi. Now, rewind back to 9/11 and the pre-9/11 day. Think of how ludicrous this story is. A 42-year-old graduate student, and there's nothing wrong with being 42 and going back to school. My dad went back to school much later in life, but he's a 42-year-old graduate student who receives the two of the terrorists who flew planes into buildings in the United States of America not that long later, receives them at the airport in LA, takes them to his house, spends lots of time with them, integrates them into the community. But the account for what he said happened was he met them randomly at the airport. That doesn't make much sense on the face of it.
Kind of happened to be at LAX and
no, exactly.
You guys from
and
Saudi.
Hey, you know, you look like guys we might get along with, and then suddenly become fast friends at the airport, so much so that he takes them up. So it's a little suspicious. But hey, the 9/11 Commission and the FBI looked into it, and at the time they said his account is accurate.
Yeah, it sounds legit.
It sounds super legit, right? Now, there was some
hanging out at LAX.
You know, these guys came from Saudi Arabia. Does this guy who received them have any ties to Saudi Arabia? That's where they landed. But now, 20 years later, in 2021 and 2022, the FBI quietly declassifies documents. They have to. 20 years later is the deadline. That suggests that, oh, wait a minute. They did know, actually, that this guy was a Saudi intelligence operative. Interesting how that works. Just slips that right under there 20 years later. Now, there are real consequences for this right now because there's a federal case of families of victims on 9/11 that want accountability, that are determining answers. So they're suing the Saudi government. And the case turns on whether or not this is true. Because you know those attackers were from Saudi Arabia. The Bush administration, you'd have the 9/11 Commission, bipartisan. You have the fact of the FBI, CIA, everybody saying that, no, this guy was really just acting independently here. But now we say is a Saudi intelligence operative. There's really the question of whether the Saudi Arabia owes damages to these families. So this is a relevant question. So is this the main point I'm focused on in my campaign? No, I'm not. We have to focus on the future of the country. But if I'm asked a question and I answer honestly based on the facts, I don't think they would have come for me if this was false, if this was ludicrous.
Of course.
Lying
is never punished.
Lying is never punished. But it's speaking the truths you're not supposed to speak. That's what actually attracts the immune response, the anaphylaxis.
But why? I mean, you made I thought, a really wonderful point in one of your responses to this, in which you said it's not okay for the government to lie to us, period, in a democracy. It's poison, and it corrodes the system that we revere, democracies.